In this video, we're looking at UFC Atlantic City. I'll give you my full card predictions and timestamps will be below. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. At the top of the card, we have Erin Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot. Another week, another main event from the women's flyweight division where the winner of this one should be next in line for a title shot. These two are a combined 12-0 in the UFC, and as far as rankings go, this is number 2 versus number 3 this week, but despite the talent, despite the magnitude of the main event, despite being so close in the rankings, I think they're worlds apart. Just like how we felt with the Peyton Talbot versus Cameron Simon fight last week, I expect this one to be one-way traffic and the betting line ain't wide enough. While it's obvious that Manon Fiorot is one of the best fighters in the division today, I think that Erin Blanchfield is a nightmarish matchup for her. She's looked great in the UFC, very aggressive striking, she lands heavy, active with that lead leg to kind of control the pace and the distance of her opponents. She's taken over fights with her grappling, she has the cardio to go hard 3 rounds, she hasn't really been hurt in there. There's a lot to like about Manon Fiorot. Now we can look at her UFC run and we can poke some holes in it if we wanted to, like Victoria Leonardo, not UFC caliber, Tabitha Ricci up a weight class on short notice making her debut, Mayra Bueno Silva clearly cutting way too much weight to be fighting at flyweight. You've got Jennifer Maia, who's a 500 fighter before that fight and after that fight when it comes to her UFC record. Katlyn Chookagian is a talented fighter, but she's not very dangerous and she's not going to wrestle at all. And then Thug Rose Namajunas up a weight class and she broke her hand in the first round and still took the 3rd round off of Fiorot. Now none of those things are untrue, but they don't tell the whole story. Manon Fiorot is not winning because the fighters that she's fighting aren't all that good. She's winning because she's beating them everywhere. And a lot of that to me has to do with her just being physically dominant. So I don't really have a problem with Manon Fiorot as a fighter. I don't see any huge glaring holes in her game. But the reason why the line is not wide enough is because Erin Blanchfield is the best fighter in the division by a mile. She's going to give up a little bit of size here, but nobody's going to fight with the kind of pace that she does, look for the amount of takedowns that she does, and just make you work the way that she does. Even in her last fight against Talia Santos, she was outstruck in the first round, she lost the first round, and frankly, she looked stiff.
You're stiff as a board.
At range against good strikers, she tends to react a bit late to what's coming her way. She didn't look all that fluid or all that natural on the feet, and that's okay. Talia Santos is a beast. She just signed with PFL, but she arguably beat Valentina Shevchenko. And I don't know if Erin Blanchfield's going to look like that on the feet in every fight, because just look at when she fought Jessica Andrade. She looked career best from a striking perspective. But against Talia Santos, despite dropping that first round, she won the rest of her rounds because she kept moving forward, she stayed aggressive, and she never gave Santos a moment to breathe. That's what sets her apart in these fights, and that's what's going to set her apart in this week's main event, because Manon Fiorot probably is going to have a good round 1, a decent round 2, but she's going to be forced to fight at a pace that she's not accustomed to. Fiorot has done a great job of being the one who's in control of the fight. She dictates the range, the pace, and the intensity. And that's a trait that all great fighters have, but Erin Blanchfield is undeniable. She forces you to fight the way that she wants to fight, and you can't do anything else. She forces her opponents to be more defensive than offensive. She doesn't move backwards, and even if she drops the first round or 2, she's going to keep coming forward. I expect her to get the clinch, use that great inside trip that she has in her back pocket, and I see her breaking Manon Fiorot as this fight goes on. Being 10 years younger is not going to hurt either. So give me the youth, give me the wrestling, give me the pace. I think that she finds a submission after round 2, after she rinse and repeats takedowns for 3 rounds. I think Manon Fiorot is not going to have anything for her in the championship rounds. Give me Erin Blanchfield by submission. In our co-main event slot, we have a ridiculous fight at welterweight between Vicente Luque and Joaquin Buckley, and welterweight Joaquin, 2-0 in the UFC. Watch out. He's been looking good at this weight class, but he's got to be better than good this week because he has a huge test on his hands. He dusted Andre Fialho in the 2nd round of his first fight at 170 pounds. They fought at a pretty measured pace early on in that fight, but Buckley had his moments. It wasn't until the end of the 2nd round where he found a head kick that just laid him out. Super slick head kick, and we also know that Joaquin Buckley has that type of power that he can land through the guard and still rock you. In his last fight against Alex Morono, he was just the fresher man later in that fight. His pressure, his pace, it really slowed Morono down. And Buckley was able to just cruise to a decision win. Now he's not going to be able to do the same thing to Vicente Luque because he's not going to get tired. Luque, who's coming off of a dominant win over Rafael dos Anjos on the last card that we got it perfect. We hit the entire card. We plan to do it again this week because we do it once a year, so why not now? And if you're a fan of MMA, you are a fan of Vicente Luque. The guy is a legend. He's one of the best fighters to never hold a belt in the company's history, and the tape speaks for itself. He can do everything in there at such a high level. His jiu-jitsu is as dangerous and as opportunistic as it gets. He quietly throws some of the hardest body kicks in the sport. Obviously, he's got hands and he's got heart for days. I think it's pretty obvious here that Vicente Luque is the better fighter with better skills and more ways to win. And Joaquin Buckley has faced great fighters in the past, like Nasruddin Imavov and Chris Curtis, but Vicente Luque is a different test best to them both. Imavov was busting Buckley up at range and was able to out-wrestle him through 2 rounds. Chris Curtis stood in the pocket, caught him with a clean left hand that knocked him out. Luque can do those things too, and a bit more, because his pace is going to be higher than both of them. He's not going to fade later in the fight like Imavov did. He's not going to sit back and wait for a counter shot the way Chris Curtis would. I think he can wrestle effectively here if he chooses. Luque is better, period. But and this may be a process mistake, I think that Buckley knocks him out. Joaquin Buckley is somebody you can never sleep on, especially that presence that he has in the cage. He's one of those fighters that you watch and you kind of tense up because you feel like everything could be the shot that ends the fight. You know that he's going to crack, and you got Vicente Luque, who has legendary durability. This is known. But why, class, do we talk about people with legendary durability? What is the evidence of this? Say it with me. Because his chin has been tested time and time again. Correct. You're talking about a guy that has gone to war over and over again, which is part of what makes him a legend, but it's also part of what makes me feel like Joaquin Buckley's going to catch him. Brian Barberena, Mike Perry, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Nico Price, Jeff Neal, all guys that went to war with him, busted him up. And I'm not saying that he lost all of these fights, but he did take a lot of damage throughout. And we were all over Jeff Neal to be the first man to knock him out in that fight because of the wars that he had and the power that Jeff Neal brings to the fight. Now, that was a brutal fight where he took tons of damage. Once again, one of the nastiest knockouts you ever seen in terms of just the way somebody's body reacts. So I think the seal is broken for Vicente Luque's durability. I think his chin is cracked, and Buckley has that sneaky length to go along with tremendous power and underrated speed. Luque is historically very hittable as well. He tends to stand right in front of guys, so I see Buckley wrapping a hook around that high Luque guard and putting him down shortly after. I think that Joaquin Buckley busts up parlays this week. Give me Numanza. Give me Joaquin Buckley to win this fight by knockout. Next, we have a fight between Bruno Silva and Chris Weidman, a middleweight mismatch if we've ever seen one. You know at this point, Chris Weidman's show and win money are massive, so that's why he keeps going out there and trying to compete, but he's not nearly at the level that he once was. You see there on the screen, he's 15-7. Obviously, that's not a terrible record by any means, but there was a time where he was 13-0. Undefeated in the UFC, a champion with wins over Anderson Silva, Lyoto Machida, Vitor Belfort, but since then he's gone 2-7. Not only has it been 2-7, but he's been knocked out in 6 of those 7 losses, albeit one was via a broken leg, which is another thing. The man snaps his leg at nearly 37 years old, so he has to take time off, heal, learn to walk again, recover, get back into training, all for his return to be a fight where he loses every round to Brad Tavares. So now at 39 years old, he has to stand opposite a true knockout artist in Bruno Silva, who has not had the most successful run in the UFC either. He's 4-4 within the promotion, but the power hasn't gone anywhere, and just look at the guys that he's getting matched up with. His 4 losses are Alex Pereira, champion, Brendan Allen, soon to be champion potentially, Shara Bullet, hot prospect who was coming in expected to blow the doors off of Bruno Silva, and he lost to old man GM3, but he got GM3'd. It happens. I just don't think that Chris Weidman has any juice left. He might look good on the scales, he might have good body language in the cage because he's so comfortable with competing, but Bruno Silva is going to land a big shot right away. And it's going to be the heaviest punch that Weidman has felt in years outside of maybe when he was knocked out by Dominic Reyes at light heavyweight. Now, it is low-key in Chris Weidman's wheelhouse to beat an aging Brazilian here, but I think that Bruno Silva gets back on track here, picks up a knockout win. He does in the first or second round. Give me Blindado to win this week by knockout. Real quick, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works. Just get it out of the way early. Next, we have a fight between Nursulton, Ruziboev. He's fighting Sedriques Dumas this week. Lots of momentum coming in on both sides. You got SD Dumas coming in on a 2-fight winning streak after dropping his UFC debut to Josh Fremd. These wins are over Cody Brundage and Abu Azaitar, where he looked like he was the better grappler in there, not by a huge margin, but he was doing just enough. Against Cody Brundage, he was able to just control him, really lay and pray for most of that fight. Cody Brundage kept looking for submissions, kept looking for that guillotine that does not work for him. And Abu Azaitar, he had most of his success when he was able to get his grappling going, and he did have some success at range, although he fell behind on the numbers a bit. On the other side, Ruziboev just won his UFC debut with a first-round knockout over Bruno Ferreira, where he was able to catch a kick, put him down with a right hand, knock him out. Knocked him out in just over a minute of the first round, and he was able to use that huge reach advantage that he had in that fight to full effect. He actually pulled out of the last fight that he was scheduled to have, and that was against Caio Pajalio, probably pulled out on purpose. But now he's back in there, ready to compete this week in a fight that I think think is a lot more winnable than the Caio Borralho fight would have been. It's hard to be impressed with what Dumas has done in the UFC. He came in billed as this knockout artist, this elite street fighter, and if you look back on his record, he was fighting guys with little to no experience. He was towering over a lot of these guys that he was knocking out in the first round of these fights. But now that he's in the UFC, his output is really low. He's not really hurting anybody with his hands. Josh Fremd was able to match his size, match his intensity, and was able to beat him everywhere. I expect Ruziboev to be able to do the same thing here. I think he has him covered from a grappling perspective, definitely on the feet. I think he's a lot more powerful in his hands and his kicks. And I think Dumas is really going to struggle with having to stand opposite from somebody that's much bigger than him. He's used to, again, towering over guys. Now he's going to be the one looking up, and I think that's going to give him a lot of trouble just psychologically. Dumas is probably going to look to grapple here because he's had success with doing that in his last two fights, but I think that Ruziboev is going to deny the grappling, force the guy to strike. And on the feet, he's not the fast, athletic, knockout artist kind of guy that he was touted to be coming into the UFC. We've learned that now. Like, yes, he hasn't fought great competition, but he's looked the way that you would want him to look against not so great competition. And mind you, he knocked out Bruno Ferreira, who knocked out Gregory Rodriguez. MMA math doesn't always line up, but that means something. I think that Dumas really struggles with the length here. I think he's going to have a hard time punching upward. I think that if his wrestling doesn't get going early, he's going to get stuck on the feet, and it's just not going to work out for him. So give me Ruziboev to win this fight by knockout. I expect some time in the first round. Next, we have a fight between Bill Algeo and Kyle Nelson. Kyle Nelson, for the first time in his UFC career, coming off of back-to-back wins. First, he beat Blake Bilder, who is frankly basura. But he follows that up with a win over Fernando Padilla, who looked nothing short of world-class last week. Huge feather in his cap, easily the best win of his career. So right now, Kyle Nelson should be more confident than a guy who just got his hair cut for the first time in a few months, because that win over Fernando Padilla was shocking and impressive to see. And it wasn't just impressive that he won, it was impressive how he was able to win, because you'll notice Kyle Nelson's not putting a whole lot of volume out there. But when you look at the numbers, no one has landed over 79 significant strikes in a fight against Kyle Nelson, and that's why he beat Fernando Padilla. He has a way of making guys fight at a slower pace. Whether it's his movement, whether it's the clinch that he likes to go for, Kyle Nelson competes at a certain speed, and he makes guys compete at that same speed. Which is interesting in this one, because Bill Algeo is somebody who can go out there and throw a lot of volume. Now, where Algeo struggles is he does tend to give up a lot of takedowns, but he does a good job of getting up to his feet, defending submissions like you saw against Herbert Burns. The dude hasn't been submitted in nearly a decade, and when he does get taken down, never stops working. So I expect Bill Algeo to have the quicker feet, and when they're at range, he's going to have the more appealing style. What matters most is if Kyle Nelson forces him to fight that Kyle Nelson style of fight. Now, Bill Algeo's favored, but frankly, I don't love the idea of picking him here. If Nelson is able to slow the pace, get takedowns, I think that Algeo lets minutes slip by here, as a result lets rounds slip by, and as a result loses the fight. But I want you to consider this for a second. Kyle Nelson has won his last two fights, so if he wins this week, that will make it 3 in a row. Kyle Nelson is on a 3-fight win streak in the UFC is a sentence that you would tell a sleeper agent to wake them up. I can't see that happening, and I think for Bill Algeo to win, he just has to be himself. Showboat a bit, use that flashy technique, win the numbers game, don't get sucked into Kyle Nelson's type of fight, and try to keep the feet. I'll put my money on that. I will put my money on Bill Algeo to get it done this week. I don't think he knocks him out. I don't think he submits him. I think it's by decision, which is a prop we want to attack this week. So give me Bill Algeo to win this fight by decision. Again, that's a prop we look to attack this week on the official betting article that'll be up later in the week. We're going to have 10 bets on there because I've gotten some feedback. People like the higher volume stuff. If you want access to the official betting article for this week's fights, you can visit kunithmma.com, linked in the description and in a pinned comment. If you go with total access, that will give you the official betting article, the DFS strategy guide, lineup optimizer, data and projections, access to the community forum, all of that good stuff. That is the best value, the best way to support the channel. And again, that can be found on kunithmma.com. That'll be linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Now back to the breakdown. Next, we have a fight that is at welterweight, surprisingly, between Rhys, McKee, and Chidi and Njokuani. At the time of recording this, Chidi and Njokuani sitting at around -200. I couldn't tell you why. The fight is at welterweight, so he's going to be super depleted. I don't know how this dude is going to make welterweight. We'll see. But not only that, he has not looked good in nearly 2 years. He made a huge statement in his UFC debut when he knocked out Marc-Andre Barriol just a few seconds into the first round with a perfect right hand. He follows that up with a knockout over Dusko Todorovic in a fight that he was losing nearly every second of before he landed that big elbow over the top. So at this point, I'm thinking what everybody else is thinking. This guy is middleweight Francis Ngannou. One shot is all it takes and he's knocking you out. He fights RoboCop. Gregory Rodriguez is a beast, but if there's one issue that you can have with him is that he leaves his chin way up in the air and he gets knocked out. But he didn't knock Gregory Rodriguez out. In fact, I think Gregory Rodriguez took his soul. Chidi threw everything in the kitchen sink at RoboCop and essentially gassed in around 3 minutes. RoboCop just kept throwing, and Chidi and Njokuani said no mas in the second round, never the same after that. And I say that because you look at his fight against Albert Duraev, accepted bottom position in that fight, didn't want to throw when they were at range, and he lost the fight because of it. He didn't really need to do much to win that fight, and he lost because he wouldn't throw enough. In his last fight against Michał Oleksiejczuk, he started slowing down literally 60 seconds into the fight. Go back and watch it, it's no joke. For the first minute of the fight, he comes out like a bat out of hell. He's landing knees in the clinch. He looks like he's about to fold Lord Michał up. And once that clock hits 4:00, he starts backing up. He's still landing shots here and there, but he's no longer being the aggressor in this one. He's accepting the back foot. And in the end, he gets knocked out from punches from full guard, which does not happen often. And of course, middleweight Michał has crazy power, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that he knocks him out with strikes from guard, but I think that Chidi and Njokuani just got really tired and didn't want to fight anymore. Now on the other side, Rhys McKee, 0-3 in the UFC. He's coming off of a loss to Angelusa where if he had maybe 10, 20, 30 more seconds, definitely 30 more seconds, he would have won that fight. He was getting dominated by Angelusa with the grappling, but he fought hard late in that fight, nearly knocked him out. We saw him dominated by Alex Morono when it came to the grappling as well, and of course he was destroyed by Khamzat Chimaev in his UFC debut, no shame in that. If you take Rhys McKee to the ground, you can have a lot of success, and Chidi and Njokuani is not bad on the ground at all. I think Chidi could have a lot of success if he gets him down there. I also like the power from Chidi. I like the knees to the body that he throws, but I can't get behind that gas tank. Rhys McKee has cardio for days, and he's super tough. He has hand speed to land combinations, he has those big long arms, and this is his world. You stand across from Rhys McKee and you start to fade, he's really going to put it on you, and we know that cardio is king in MMA, and we have a workhorse against a supernova. I'll take the workhorse here. I think all he needs to do is survive the first 2 minutes and drown Chidi and Njokuani with his volume, with his forward pressure. I think that Rhys McKee comes out, does what he needs to do, lands a lot of strikes, throws in combination, just breaks him. And to get the guy with much better cardio at plus money down at this weight class when Chidi and Njokuani maybe is doing this as a desperation play. We talk about this on the channel all the time. You see these guys who have a little bit of success at a weight class, then things aren't going their way, so they go down a weight class. They do this because they're chasing a size advantage. They want some different advantage that they feel like they don't have at the weight class that they're in right now. But Chidi and Njokuani, 6'3", dense bones, you know what I mean? You don't need to fight at welterweight. Like, he just needs to have a better gas tank. And frankly, he might not have the physical capability to have a better gas tank. But I don't think that dropping down to 170 is going to serve him all that well, especially after fighting at middleweight for so long. So you want to give me the younger guy with better cardio at his weight class at plus money? Sure thing. Rhys McKee by knockout. Next, we have a fight between Nate the Train Landwehr and Jamall Emmers. Nate the Train is coming off of a loss to Dan Ige. Dan Ige just had him covered in that fight. He was able to land the better strikes, land more powerful strikes, and he just looked a step ahead of our boy Nate the Train. And on the other side, Jamall Emmers is coming off of a knockout win over Dennis Buzukja, who is also on the card that we'll talk about a bit later. Now for me, I could see this one going one of two ways. I could see Nate the Train winning a decision because he is somebody who has a fan-friendly style. He's more aggressive than Jamall Emmers, and Jamall Emmers has let fights slip. Lost a split decision against Jack Jenkins, although not a great decision. Lost a split decision against Giga Chikadze in a fight that if he did just a little bit more, he would have won. So to me, it comes down to if Jamall Emmers can match the intensity that Nate the Train fights with, and I think that he can because I think Nate the Train will force him to be that way. Jamall Emmers has been knocked out before, he's been submitted before. Those finishes are few and far between for him. He's typically very durable, and I think that he's going to be able to take the offense coming back from Landwehr. Whereas Nate Landwehr is one of these guys who's super aggressive, but he can get dropped like that. Since he's giving up a little bit of length, a little bit of height, I think that Jamall Emmers is going to be able to land cleaner and more effectively from range. Nate the Train tends to get into brawls. He doesn't have great striking defense. He has lost the numbers game in the past, and I think that Jamall Emmers, somebody who's smooth, somebody who can control that range, is going to give him a lot of trouble. Where I could see Landwehr also having success is if he's able to get on top, start looking for submissions. He's got a deep submission bag, something that's kind of surprising coming out of a guy who's billed as a brawler. Outside of getting caught with that heel hook against Pat Sabatini, he has been very solid. Nobody in the UFC has really been able to run through him, and I don't think that Nate the Train is going to win that kind of fight against Jamall Emmers. Frankly, I think that Jamall Emmers is going to be landing at will, and I think that he's going to catch him with a right hand probably more than once, knock him down probably more than once, and I think he wins by knockout. He doesn't knock guys out left and right, but he does have that good, straight, long right hand that he can land down the middle, and I think he finds the chin from Nate the Train this week. I'm interested to see what a Jamall Emmers knockout looks like from a betting perspective, what the odds look like, and I'm also interested to see what that looks like on Underdog Fantasy this week. That's where I lean this week, and I love me some Nate the Train. I think everybody watching loves Nate the Train, but I'm going to go with the better guy, the smoother guy, the cleaner guy, the better fundamentals, the better right hand. I'm going to go with Jamall Emmers to win this fight by knockout. Next, we have a fight with Virna Jandiroba. She's fighting Luque Godinez, and for this fight, let me be clear.
Barbecue chicken alert.
I agree with you, Shaq Diesel. I do think this is a barbecue chicken alert between Luque Godinez and Virna Jandiroba because Luque is a dog. She puts a pace on these ladies that she's fighting, and she has a very meat and potatoes approach. She's got that boxing, wrestling archetype that's working really well in these women's divisions. And underneath all that, she's got serious toughness, good cardio, and I think Luque is going to be a problem for everywhere this fight takes place. Jandiroba does have good jiu-jitsu. That's where she will have the edge. I think that she is the better grappler when the fight hits the mat, but it would have to be on her terms, and I don't think Luque's going to let that happen. Jandiroba tends to lay and pray her way to wins like she did against Marina Rodriguez, did the same thing against Angela Hill, but she was outstruck by Mackenzie Dern. She can also get taken down as well, and I think Luque has her covered in that respect. I think Godinez is the better striker, the better wrestler. She's younger, she's physically stronger. I think she's the better athlete, and she's going to have more to give when we hit the third round. And even if Virna is able to get the fight to the ground on her terms, I don't see her being able to control Luque the way that she has been with these recent women that she fought. I think Lupe's going to continue to fight to get back up to her feet. I don't think Virna's going to keep getting away with controlling her way to victory. I think from a judging perspective, we see that starting to get phased out more and more. So give me Lupe to get the fight to the ground on her terms, win the striking exchanges, just be the busier fighter, look better in the third round and win more minutes. Give me Luque Godinez to win by decision. Next, we have a crazy one with Herbert Burns and Julio Arce. Arce may be minus 500 by the time the fights roll around. And that's pretty hard to argue with. And I will say that MMA betting lines are heavily influenced by recency bias. We all know that. And what is the last image we have of Herbert Burns? The last image we have of Herbert Burns competing is him losing in the second round via exhaustion, and not like late into the second round either. This was pretty early in the second round. He was carried out of the cage crying. One of the craziest images you will see in the history of the sport. So of course nobody wants to touch Herbert Burns. And it's crazy because Herbert Burns, when he's fresh, is very dangerous. He's got underrated striking, very good knees in the clinch. He snatches submissions up in a flash, and it's really hard to justify Julio Arce being minus 500. He's 3-4 in his last 7 fights over the last 5 years. He's not a world beater by any means, and you are paying a championship type of price for him this week. So it's a bit crazy, but you can't argue that he has power, good takedown defense on paper. Obviously, he's got better cardio. Most people on the roster have better cardio. And on top of that, Julio Arce is a dog, very hard to put away. Is the crier and Herbert Burns going to do that to him? I don't know. Crazier things have happened, but I have a very hard time seeing Herbert Burns win this fight if it goes beyond the first round. Your best bet here is to probably take the under because I feel like it can go either way, but I will take the tougher fighter to get it done here. Cardio is king. Durability is not too far behind it. Give me Julio Arce to win this fight inside the distance. Next, we have a fight between Connor Matthews making his UFC debut against Dennis Buzukja. Connor Matthews looked real good on Contender Series, showed a lot of toughness early on, was able to lean on his wrestling and his grappling, and turned in a very strong performance over a scary Brazilian knockout artist fighting out of a good gym. He got stunned on the feet early, low kicks were giving him trouble, but he was able to push through it and do what he does best. Now on the other side, Dennis Buzukja has not looked good in the UFC. He took a fight on short notice against Sean Woodson where he lost every round, which I'm okay with. You can let that slide. He was literally on days notice, and Sean Woodson with his length and frame is tricky to deal with even on a full camp, so that's expected. Okay, that's fine. But he follows that up with getting knocked out in just under a minute against Jamall Emmers, and that really doesn't happen. So it's hard to look at this guy with any kind of confidence. I don't know how he's the favorite in this matchup because he hasn't shown anything promising in the UFC. On top of that, he has faced really low-level competition outside of the promotion, which is not a huge deal. Connor Matthews is not too far removed from a fight against Jay Ellis. If you know, you know. But what's concerning is that Buzukja is fighting these low-level guys, and he's going the distance. When life gives you tomato cans, you have to crush them, and that's not what he's doing, but that's what we see Connor Matthews doing, winning almost all of his fights inside the first round. I expect Matthews to be the more dangerous of the two. He's got more finishing upside early in this fight. He should be able to get takedowns as well. Buzukja has never been submitted, but he's not fought somebody who could submit him at this level. Matthews is going to be able to get him to the mat. He should start hunting for submissions right away. It's just really hard to get behind somebody like Dennis Buzukja, who's favored. Based on what he's looked like recently, he is a plus money play exclusively, so I will take the other side. Give me the guy with the momentum, momentum, the better finisher, the tougher guy between the two. Give me Connor Matthews to win this fight by submission. And we have a similar situation in this next fight between Ibo Aslan fighting Anton Turkalj. Aslan is making his UFC debut, somebody who got a knockout on Contender Series. Almost all of his wins are by knockout in the first round. All of them are by knockout, but most of them are in the first round. This is not the first time these two have fought. Anton Turkalj does have a win over him from a few years ago when he submitted him in the second round after Aslan gassed out. So Kunith, if he's got a win over him and cardio is king and he gasses out after the first round, shouldn't Turkalj be the move? Typically, all of that would make sense, but not in this one because Turkalj has just not looked good in the UFC. 0-3 in the promotion. Granted, he fought Jailton Almeida. You can give him a pass. Cool. After that, he loses a competitive fight against Vitor Petrino that goes the distance. At that point, I'm pretty high on him. So they match him up with Tyson Pedro, and I'm thinking he should give Tyson Pedro trouble. As long as he escapes the first round, he should be able to put it on him after that and be able to get him out of there. Nope. Knocked out in the first round. And I think that's the same thing that happens this week because Ibo is coming in with ridiculous power. He's clearly improved since their first fight, and that fight was not one-way traffic by any means. Ibo was having his own success. So to get this guy 0-3 in the UFC, he came into the UFC 8-0. His confidence has got to be pretty shaken. If he loses this fight, he's basically out of the UFC. If he wins and it doesn't look great, he's basically out of the UFC anyway. Versus Aslan, who's got a 4-fight deal, really nothing to lose, and he's riding high on all these first-round knockouts. So I think that he can come in here and do the same thing to Anton Turkalj coming off of a first-round knockout of his own. A loss, that is. So I think that Ibo Aslan puts it on him, gets his lick back, wins this fight, moves to 1-0 in the promotion. Anton Turkalj, unfortunately, moves to 0-4 in the promotion. Give me the debutant, give me the power, give me that first-round upside, give me Ibo Aslan to win this fight by knockout. Next, we have a fight between Victoria Dudakova and Melissa Gatto. This is a scrap. Melissa Gatto is 2-2 in the UFC, coming off of her first two losses in the promotion. The first was a loss to Tracy Cortez, where she got taken down and was not able to get off that signature jiu-jitsu of hers. Melissa Gatto's got a very active guard, can get that arm bar from guard, but Tracy Cortez was hip to it. She stayed square, wasn't going to let it happen. And against Ariane Lipski, she really struggled to get the fight down to the mat. She went 0-for-7 on takedown attempts. She was forced to strike in that fight, and it was still a very close fight. Could have went either way. Split decision in that one, and now she has to deal with Victoria Dudakova, who is coming in 2-0 in the UFC. Dudakova made her debut against Estela Nunes, where she shot for a takedown, kind of gator rolled through it. Estela Nunes breaks her arm, freak injury kind of thing in the first 30 seconds of the fight, but she gets a win in her debut. She follows that up with a decision win over Jinyu Fry, where she was the much better striker, landed a lot heavier. She did drop around in that fight though because she was taken down, couldn't get back up to her feet. That's where I think she'll have some trouble here against Melissa Gatto, who is a bit more seasoned, has fought higher level competition, has been in the UFC longer, and has faced a bit more adversity in the cage. I think Gatto's going to be able to take her down. I think on the feet it's going to be competitive. Gatto's got decent, sneaky, long striking. On the mat is where Gatto is probably going to distance herself in this one. On the feet it should be very competitive both ways. But once Gatto gets her down there, I think she's in her world, and I think she's going to be able to finish the fight from there. Might not be in the first round, but I do think a second round finish is definitely on the table. And even if Dudakova tries to get the fight down to the mat on her terms, again, we have a very active guard coming from Melissa Gatto. That should put her in a position to wrap up an arm and win this fight via submission. That's what I think happens here. Give me the Brazilian, give me the fighter that's a bit older, more UFC experience, give me Melissa Gatto to win by submission. Next, we have a clash of styles within a style when this fight between Andre Petroski and Jacob Malkoun. Jacob Malkoun is one of the most effective MMA wrestlers in the sport today. He's done right by us a few times in the UFC. He was starched in his UFC debut against Phil Hawes just seconds into the fight, but outside of that, he has been great. Beat Abdul Razak Al Hassan, AJ Dobson. Brendan Allen got the nod on the scorecards, but myself, as well as many people, thought that Jacob Malkoun should have won that fight. Beats Nick Maximov, no problem, even though Maximov got hurt a bit in that fight. He was killing Cody Brundage in his last fight before landing a strike to the back of the head that got him disqualified. So as far as I'm concerned, Jacob Malkoun is the truth. And again, one of the most effective MMA wrestlers in the sport today, and that's because he understands leverage and single leg takedowns up against the fence better than anyone in the UFC that's fighting today. He gets guys to the fence, he gets to that single leg, dumps them. Simple as that. And he makes it look easy because he makes it easy, if that makes sense. So often we see guys fight as hard as they can to get down on a double leg, try to reach their hands around the back or around the butt, clasp their hands, then lift guys up. And even then, they're lifting guys up and then they're dropping them right where they stand, but their back is still up against the fence. We see guys get to a hip, get back to their feet like that. Jacob Malkoun is dumping guys away from the fence, and he's able to get on top and as a result stay on top. And if they get back up, which a lot of these guys do, he's able to dump them again. He's not using a whole lot of power, a whole lot of cardio, a whole lot of energy to get these guys to the mat. That's the difference. Now on the other side, Andre Petroski's done well in the UFC. Up until recently, he went life or death with Gerald Meerschaert in a fight where he won a dicey split decision, really could have went either way. Then he was knocked out in 66 seconds last time out against Michel Pereira, but before that, he was running through guys. He beat everybody on this 4-fight winning streak. He looked very promising before that GM3 fight, but the problem with that is that everybody that he beat in that 4-fight span aren't in the UFC anymore. Now on this channel, we like Andre Petroski. He's a big submission threat. We'll never forget when he was the biggest underdog and the cheapest play on DraftKings against Nick Maximov, and we were all over him. But Jacob Malkoun has never been submitted. He's never been out-wrestled. He went the distance with Brendan Allen, who's one of the best fighters in the division and probably the most dangerous grappler overall at middleweight right now. Plus, Malkoun has much better cardio than Petroski. Plus, Malkoun has much better cardio from Petroski. Petroski's going to be forced to fight off of his back, work back up to his feet, get dumped again. He's going to get demoralized. That happens when guys fight Jacob Malkoun. He just does it. He breaks him. I think Malkoun cooks him to the bone with these rinse and repeat takedowns this week, and he ends up finishing him with ground and pound, probably in the late second or early third round. Give me the younger man, the better wrestler. He's looked better in recent fights. I'll take Jacob Malkoun to win this fight by knockout. And lastly, we have a fight between Angel Pacheco and Keelan Loughran, and if anybody has ever looked like a cop, it's this guy. If this guy asks you where the drugs are at, don't tell him. But no, this fight, Keelan Loughran is one of the biggest favorites on the card, somebody who probably should pay off that price, parlay fuel of the highest order, and we don't bestow that title onto just anybody. Loughran's got him covered everywhere. Angel Pacheco is somebody with an opportunistic ground game, he throws a lot of volume. He went to war with Danny Silva, and we know that Danny Silva's got huge power, lots of volume, elite toughness. But Loughran is somebody who forces you to fight moving backwards. He's going to get you up against the cage. He's going to try to take you down. He's got power in both of his hands as well. The way you beat him is with volume, if you float around the outside. We saw him drop his UFC debut in Paris against Taylor Lapilus, and that's going to happen against a guy who's got good footwork like that. But against Angel Pacheco, who is also coming at you on a straight line, I think that Loughran makes it look easy this week. I think he dominates him for all 3 rounds. It does go the distance. I don't think he finishes Pacheco here. Pacheco's very tough. He's going to be in it from start to finish, but I think that we get a clean 30-27 sweep because Keelan Loughran just going to stay in his face, win these minutes, be the more aggressive guy, get his takedowns, and overall just show that he's got a more well-rounded skill set. So give me the Irishman to get it done here. Give me Keelan Loughran to win this fight by decision. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, and I will see you later for final picks. Let's go.